When it comes to AI, you can't really talk about it without talking about LLMs, so the large language models. These are the engines behind ChatGPT, behind Google Gemini, and Copilot. So they write emails, they summarize books, they generate code, they even hold conversations that feel just human. But here's the question, do they really understand? Or are we just impressed by an illusion of understanding, almost like a very advanced probability machine dressed in human like language? So, in this episode, let's unpack that very question, but through three different lenses. So, the first one, of course, has to be the technical lens, right? What do LLMs actually do? The second, in our standard traditional economic fashion, let's look at what it means for work, for markets, and for power. And lastly, the bit that's really important and sometimes missing in this conversation, the spiritual lens. So, what do these models reveal about the difference between surface and depth? So, first of all, how do these models even work? Imagine I start a sentence with the stock market today is dot dot dot. Now, as humans might pause and we might think of news, we might try to think of the market trends and reflect on what stock market actually means. But an LLM does something completely different. So it looks at billions of examples it has already seen. It calculates the probability of every possible next word and it picks the one most likely to follow. It doesn't really know about stocks. It doesn't analyze reality. What it's doing is it's predicting language, word after word, sentence after sentence. Think of it as the most powerful autocomplete machine ever built. And to make this possible, researchers built enormous neural networks with billions, sometimes trillions of parameters. Parameters are like dials tuned during training on massive datasets of text. Those dials capture patterns of how words connect. An analogy can be language learning. So, for example, a child, they don't start with grammar rules, they absorb patterns, and over time, they generalize. Similarly, LLMs generalize from patterns, but there's one critical difference. A child grounds the words in lived experience, so whether it's hunger, joy, friendship, loss, but the model doesn't. It can't. Well, as of today anyway. It has patterns without grounding, and that's why LLMs hallucinate. If you ask for a historical reference, it might even invent a book that never existed. Because it doesn't know truth, it only optimizes for coherence. So, from the technical lens, do they understand? No. They simulate fluency, but they do not ground meaning in reality. Now, let's switch to economics. So, whenever a huge technology emerges, we do have to think of a few questions. Does it increase productivity? Does it displace jobs? Well, LLMs do both. They can draft a legal contract in seconds, reducing the demand for junior lawyers. They can generate marketing material in minutes, replacing what interns might have done in hours. They can even debug code, making one developer as productive as three. In that sense, they're a force multiplier. They amplify human output. But they also destabilize the traditional career ladder. Well, think about it. If entry level roles are automated, how do people even climb to senior positions if they can't start from the entry level? So, history does give us some parallels to address this. Let's think of when the printing press displaced scribes, or when the spreadsheet displaced bookkeepers. But LLMs are different, and they're different in one crucial way, their scope. So they touch on law, on healthcare, media, education, finance, customer service, even creative arts. And because the interface is so simple, in that you're just typing into a chat box, adoption spreads faster than almost any general purpose technology before it. And the speed of adoption raises three big economic challenges. So the first is concentration of power. Now, if only a few corporations own the models that shape how the world writes and thinks, then language itself risks becoming monopolized. Economic rents, which are profits, they flow not to workers but to platform owners. Secondly, inequality. So when you first look at it, LLMs democratize access, don't they? Anyone can generate polished text. But the deeper value, the profits from training and hosting models, they are going to concentrate at the top. Billions benefit in small ways, but the financial upside flows up narrowly. And third is systemic risk. So in finance, even a single false report can move markets. Imagine a trader relying on an LLM that fabricates data. That isn't just inefficiency, it could trigger misallocations of capital or even global financial crises. This is why many businesses, from startups to blue chip companies, are both excited and cautious, probably cautiously optimistic. In boardrooms, leaders discuss LLMs as a double edged sword. Efficiency gains are real, but trust lags behind. The very same technology that saves costs can also amplify risks if not handled carefully. So, from the economic lens, LLMs they reshape labor markets. They reshape productivity, inequality, and systemic stability. They don't just generate sentences, they quietly rewrite parts of capitalism itself, and that in itself is huge. Now, let's step back and look at the human side. So, let's think about the difference between surface fluency and inner depth. So, I'm sure we've all met people who speak confidently, but their words somehow feel hollow. And we've met others who speak with simplicity, but whose words resonate deeply because they carry sincerity, conviction, lived experience. And that distinction between form and essence is the key. A handshake can either be routine or it can carry genuine warmth, right? A promise can be just words or it can be a true commitment. A ritual can be empty or it can be alive with intention. So form is the visible surface and essence is the invisible depth. Now LLMs, they are masters of form. They produce sentences that look and sound right, sometimes even perfect, but they lack essence. There isn't a lived story behind their words. There's no inner compass guiding them. And that raises a mirror for us as well. Because even as humans, we sometimes fall into the same trap, saying without meaning, working without purpose, and producing without reflection. So, this is where it helps to separate information, knowledge, and wisdom. Information, as we all know, is raw data. Knowledge is connecting the dots into structured understanding, and wisdom is judgment, so applying that knowledge but with values, with perspective, and with discernment. AI accelerates information. Sometimes it helps with knowledge, but wisdom, that reflective, value driven layer, remains uniquely human. And maybe that's the real reminder here. The true risk isn't that machines replace wisdom, but that we forget to cultivate it ourselves. Because while a machine can give us fluent words, meaning still comes from intention. While a model can predict the next sentence, judgment still rests with conscience. So while AI can mirror our language, and it does it perfectly well, it cannot mirror our humanity. So when we ask, do LLMs really understand? I guess the philosophical answer is this: they don't. But their existence forces us to ask whether we do. Are we grounding our lives in depth, not just surface? Are we cultivating wisdom, not just fluency? This is what makes us irreplaceable. Not speed, not eloquence, but depth. So, bringing it all together, across all three layers, I guess this is what we can summarize. From a technical perspective, LLMs don't understand. They are probability engines by their nature, they're predicting words, they're not entities grounded in reality. From an economic lens, they reshape work and markets as though they understood. They boost productivity, but they could concentrate power and risk. And from a philosophical perspective, they mirror fluency without essence, reminding us that wisdom and intention remain uniquely human. So, in the next episode, we'll dive into how these models are actually built, the architecture of neural networks, why scaling matters, and what happens when you push the limits of size. But for now, let's sit with this thought. Fluency without understanding is not wisdom. And in a world filled with machine generated words, our real compass is not the model's output, it's our judgment, our wisdom, and our hearts. See you in episode 4.